now able to talk to the current Iranian leadership, which is practical, and we're able to talk with them. Implied meaning, we're glad that our bombing campaign and the Israeli attacks got decapitated that military leadership we couldn't deal with, and that fellow, the supreme leader, we didn't like, so we killed him. Well, the Israelis killed him. So it's a very complicated factional run, which you can interpret strictly according to the polls. And what he has to do, he now must run against Trump, because he's losing in the poll in the Republican Party nomination to, guess who? Donald Trump Jr. He's rising in the polls. So that's the factional line up there. Now, if you figure everybody could be scratching their heads, so I recommend you have a drink. It helps clear the mind. If you look at this situation in the US, in a way, American political engineers and media and experts like you, Jamarl, look at it. It's pretty complicated, right? Could be confusing if you're a foreigner, okay? So what if you're Russian? And that was where you asked me to begin with. If you're Russian...
But before you get to Russian...
Okay.
Is this a trap? I mean, look, I am not of mind that any U.S. president is going to give up empire, which means whether it's Vance, whether it's Trump, whether it's anybody else, I don't really believe them when they say that stuff. Is this a trap, then, in the way that this is engineered, the memorandum of understanding?
Well, a trap, yes, and no. Here's why I say that. Let's just say from the Iranian point of view, because lots of colleagues and friends of mine are clearly saying and writing, and I understand why they are saying, Iran shouldn't have signed this. The President Pezeshkian shouldn't have signed it. Well, just to answer your question, it's not... Iran needs to prove several things and maintain its war aims. So let's say it needs to prove that there's nothing the American side puts on the table that can be trusted. After the performance of Witkoff and Kushner last year, they need to convince Iranian people that they're doing their best for an economy, which is seriously hurting all Iranians, right? So they have to convince Iranians, we're trying hard, we're trying to get some money back, and they're trying to get $6 billion out of Qatar, even for American food. I mean, whatever food they're going to buy, it will help lower prices in a situation of high inflation. So they're trying to establish to the Iranian constituencies that the terms they've agreed to betray no one, especially and starting with Iranian people. If there's a trap, they say, you need to see the document, folks, their own voters, their own people, and see if the Americans are already betraying their own agreements. Our answer is, in the last 24 hours, they are doing exactly that.
Yes.
So from an Iranian point of view, you could say they set a trap. They agreed, they negotiated tenaciously. They had arguments among themselves. There must have been an argument from the Iranian military side to say, look, to hell with this test. How many more tests do we need to make? Haven't we learned from 2 rounds of war? The only thing the other side understands, Israelis or Americans, is force. So we have the chokehold over Hormuz. We must not give that up right now. And then let's say Foreign Minister Arakchi, Speaker Ghalibaf have said, well, that's true. On the other hand, if we trade an opening of the Hormuz and an agreement not to charge tolls for 30 days, and we get back a value in our own money of more than the money we could have charged tankers to go out through the straits, and we can sell our own oil for 30 days, aren't we making a net cash gain, which we can plow into our somewhat desperate, sanctioned, war-torn economy? So don't the sides say, let's compromise? I'm just inventing this. I'm speculating. But if you look at the terms, it's a reasonable deal from the Iranian point of view for 30 days. 30 days. And already the violations that the Israelis are pushing are so obvious. The start of the Geneva negotiations have been postponed. That's a nice, polite, diplomatic way of saying they've been cancelled because of Israeli violations, because US approves it. Okay.
Yes. I think that I don't believe like these people who are like, oh my God, Donald Trump is fighting with Netanyahu. Oh my God, there's a rift. It's like we've seen this before. This has happened during the Biden administration. This has happened with Trump. This has happened all the way through. No, I agree with you. I think the U.S. approves it. I think this is the U.S. way of testing, let's say, Iran's credibility around the issue of Lebanon, trying to pry Lebanon away.
Iran is testing the U.S. But if you ask me, as you did at the beginning, what's the Russian assessment?
Yes.
The Russian assessment. Well, the problem in Russia is that Russia has a big war that's still underway. And in the last few hours, you've seen massive drone attack on Moscow. Not an especially damaging attack comparable to what has been done in Kiev, but the Ukrainians are trying to show that nothing that the Russian side has been able to do to damage their Ukrainian military capacity, nothing the Russian side is attempting to establish as demilitarizing the Ukraine and preventing drone war attacking Russia. Nothing like that's working. And they pull it off just as the G7 meeting in France signs a statement, which, by the way, President Trump signed, which says, I'll just read it out if I can reach for it. The G7 statement says, we commit to increase the pressure on the Russian war economy. We consider this the right moment to proceed with additional measures as President Trump has delivered a deal we support in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump signed that. Anyone who says Trump is being misled by the Europeans is cuckoo, and that's a polite way of saying what they are. But let me explain as answer to your question. You've got there Moscow, right? This is the damage done in Moscow.
That's the picture from Moscow.
This is visual propaganda designed to reinforce the Trump G7 statement. But the factional lineup in Moscow is as follows. President Putin doesn't say there's a problem with the Trump MOU with Iran. What he said a few hours ago in a summit meeting with the ASEAN countries, which include a big Muslim country, Indonesia. This is what he said. It's very simple. We believe that the fact that the document, meaning the MOU, was signed by the heads of state, President Trump and President Pezeshkian, provide grounds for expecting it to become a serious and substantive foundation for future agreements. We hope the situation in the Middle East will stabilize and Persian Gulf will stabilize, which would, among other things, have a positive effect on global energy and food markets. Either you consider that so vague as to be meaningless, then you say, why wasn't he warning? Why wasn't he the slightest bit skeptical that an American signed MOU with Trump's signature might be broken and might therefore become a test of Trump's credibility? Mightn't you say, if you're the president of Russia fighting a war against the United States, say, we look to Trump to to prove his signature on that document is credible for the peace in that region, because if it isn't, we can't trust him on the Ukraine. Mightn't you say that, Jamarl? If you were advising President Putin, I would, and I've just said it.
I would have been far more aggressive.
So,
yes.
Next point. The factional lineup in Moscow is Putin, his foreign affairs advisor, Yuri Ushakov, his spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, and his central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina, and his finance minister and a bunch of others who are less important. Ushakov has said, and this is just now, in the last few hours, Trump was prior to the signing of the G7 statement. Ushakov doesn't say Trump signed it. He says Trump has been fed, quotes, unhelpful, if not harmful ideas by the Europeans. Excuse me. Then what does Kirill Dmitriev, who's the representative of the president for negotiating the enrichment of the Trump family to facilitate a deal on Ukraine, what does he tweets every few hours? What has he said about the Iranian MOU? I tell you what he says. The answer, tweet, good. And what's he referring to? An Axios report by the Israeli reporter Barak David, who is the only person Dmitriev quotes, an Israeli mouthpiece in Axios, who's a notorious misinformation. I mean, everybody in the audience knows what Axios is. Everybody, except Kirill Dmitriev, doesn't want to insult the Israelis, wants to break the news about the MOU, not from Iran, but from an Israeli mouthpiece in Washington, and he calls that good, right? That's all he has to say about the MOU. Let's come on to some of the other Russian factional alignment with President Putin. It's just happened an hour ago. The central bank governor, Elvira Nabiullina, has been absent on sick leave or absent for political reasons as she has been arguing with Putin against the military faction in town over, first, whether Russia's in recession or not, and how much, and let's be clear, we've talked about it before, Russia is in serious recession. I mean, today's report is that steel construction is down 10% in the first quarter of this year. That's bad, folks. That's very bad. Anyway, what Nabiullina has been saying is we've got to keep the interest rate high to keep inflation low, and she supports cutting the budget deficit by cutting military expenditures and therefore reducing our ability to fight the war on the Ukraine battlefield. So what she's just done,
insane.
Well,
she's insane.
What? It's a factional lineup here, and President Putin supports her. It's just been announced the central bank governors meeting has reduced the key rate, which was 14.5%, which kills the economy and is lengthening the recession. It's just been reduced by 25 basis points from 14.5% to 14.25%. Wow. Is that going to save we're in an election, a midterm election, you could call it in September, mid-September, we're going to have State Duma election. And people are feeling the pinch across the country, and she's just improved the credit situation and stimulated the economy with an interest rate of 14.25%. But here's what the press release says. She says that this is amazing. Quotes, a higher key rate path than assumed will be likely. Why? Because, quotes, fiscal policy will be more accommodative than previously expected. Translate that. Any fool can translate that. What she means is that the increased spending on the war will increase the budget deficit, which she calls accommodative fiscal policy. But if that's happening, she's going to jack up the interest rate. So she's saying, she's basically saying to President Putin, you want to continue the war by increasing expenditure, increasing the budget deficit? I'm going to jack up the interest rate. So I'm going to kill the civilian economy. Have you ever heard anything like that in the middle of an election campaign? It's amazing. Okay, so summing it up, what we have is around Putin are Nabiullina, Silvanov, the finance minister, Dmitriev, the bribester in chief with the United States, Ushakov and others, who are saying we've got to reach an accommodation with Trump, and we're not going to criticize anything he does. Okay? Now, the military services, the intelligence services, the general staff, and the foreign ministry all think this is absolutely wrong. They are scathing. Personally, I won't use expletives, but I know that high-level Russian officials in that faction are scathing about Dmitriev. They also believe that the restrictions being placed on the general staff are so severe that they make it very, very difficult to defend the country from this sort of drone attack. So nobody in Russia is
infuriating.
What?
It is infuriating to hear this. I'm sorry to interrupt. It is very infuriating to hear this. From my point of view, there's no way to make an accommodation with the U.S. Like there's maybe in the 80s, maybe, at some point in the future when it's very dispiriting to hear that. As somebody who wants the U.S. to lose for my own reasons in regards to being in this country and being sick of, and I'm saying that as a patriot, right? Like, I don't want us succeeding, murdering a bunch of kids in the first attack in Iran in an unprovoked war of aggression. I don't want us doing that with Russia. I don't want us doing it with any country. And so succeeding breeds this behavior. I don't want this behavior to breed. I want strategic defeat and failures, whether it's in Ukraine or for that matter, whether it's in Iran. So hearing Putin, who, if he really believes that he can get an accommodation with the United States, he is out of his mind. I don't know why he believes that.
I'll tell you why he believes that. Because as a politician, I've been following President Putin since he came in 2020. I actually dealt with him in 1991 when he was the bagman for the mayor of Leningrad at the time. So he is, in his mind, a balancer. He balances between different factions, advising him on what to do. And I mean, I'm not promoting myself, but I've written lots of books and thousands of goddamn articles explaining how all this works, how he makes decisions, okay? Without boring everybody. The problem that Putin has right now is you can't balance opposites. How do you balance between a faction telling you to advance and a faction telling you or advising you to retreat? You can't balance between victory and defeat. You can't balance between trust and deceit. You just said it, Jamarl. If Trump and Vance running different campaigns with different factional voter constituencies have just clearly within a few hours demonstrated these violations of the MOU, how can a balancer balance trust in Trump or Vance, for that matter, or Witkoff and Kushner on the one hand, and Russia's war aims to defend itself not from Ukrainians, not from a Kiev regime, but from the combination of the US and Europe. The US and Europe have just signed on. I'll just read it again. We commit to increase the pressure on the Russian war economy. How can you balance with them? How can you balance with Trump? Why did Yuri Ushakov say less than 24 hours ago, where basically Witkoff and Kushner are welcome in the Kremlin. We're looking forward to having them back. And unfortunately, they've been delayed because they're preoccupied with the Iran settlement. Excuse me, mightn't you say we can't have them back because they've proven to be liars and deceit mongers? We can't have them back. Let them prove on the Iranian portfolio for which they're currently responsible that they can be trusted to honor anything they say. Why doesn't Ushakov say, we welcome them back when they prove their words worth something? Instead, we won't have them back while they're lying their heads off and deceiving them and us. Well, that's not what Ushakov is saying. What President Putin, you ask, why is he mad? How can? Well, the answer is in politics. Politicians think they can say contradictory things out of different sides of their mouth. And President Putin's had 26 years as president of Russia doing that.
That is, like I said, it's dispiriting here. From my point, we are psychopaths, and you have to treat us accordingly. Meaning, there is nothing that we've done with Russia that has been, let's say, honest, any more than what we're doing with Iran is honest. We should be. Who needs to win this war? Who needs to win this war? That's my point. It is not going to be won with some kind of deal with the United States. He needs to win it on the battlefield. It's just dispiriting me for this, because what we hear when we hear this moderation from Russia is they are weak. That's all we hear. It invites predation. And okay, how is Russia regarding the MOU? Meaning, are they, and you answered that in regards to the various people who are talking about it. But and what time is it? What time is it? Okay, I guess this will be the last question. Moving forward, what are your expectations of this? You said you wouldn't compare this to the Minsk agreements. What would you compare it to? Because as you point out, we're violating it immediately, day one. If not the Minsk. Minsk was also violated immediately. Minsk also was used as this kind of trap in order to allow the repositioning of forces, etc. Why wouldn't you compare this to the Minsk agreements?
Well, I didn't. I said I'm trying to interpret the MOU in terms of U.S. factional politics, in Russian factional politics, and you raised a very good question, Iranian factional politics, when you asked, is this all a trap? Okay?
Yes.
The reason I didn't want to compare it to Minsk is we weren't actually saying, what does the example, and you just answered your own question, as an example of deceit, as an example of buying time for deceitful purposes. There's a strong similarity between the MOU and the Minsk agreements. However, President Putin committed to the Minsk agreements, and he's now committing to the MOU with all the Minsk agreement experience that President Putin admits. He now admits that Chancellor of Germany Merkel and French President Hollande and the others all agreed on Minsk in order to buy time to increase the fortifications and build up Ukrainian battlefield to attack Russia. So President Putin's clear about that. Now his problem is that Trump is his Elvira Nabiullina's, Kirill Dmitriev's, golden-haired boy, not the golden dome, the golden idol that will somehow deliver Russia's balanced budget, Russia's low inflation rate, Russia's peace in Europe, when in fact Trump has just signed. We increased the pressure on the Russian economy, and you usefully just showed some pictures. The pictures of the attack on the Moscow refinery are mostly for publicity, but as were the attacks on the St. Petersburg refinery and the Kirishi refinery out of town in St. Petersburg, to demonstrate the Ukrainian escalation. Doesn't mean they're winning the war. It means that they're capable of doing damage to the Russian economy, exactly as the G7 has just agreed to. And why? In order to convince Russian voters the Russian army's failing. Why? Because Russian support for President Putin at the polls depends on Russian confidence in the Russian army. The correlations are tight there. The correlation there is different. In the United States, there's a very clear correlation between the price of oil and the price of gas at the pump and approval ratings for Trump and Vance.
Yes.
And there's a tight correlation between disapproval, net disapproval of Trump and net disapproval of Vance. So why did, what's his name? Vance, sorry, I'm getting too excited. Why did Vance talk about gas price and oil price? Because he knows he has got to deliver lower gas prices if he's to become a credible candidate for the presidency. So the tight correlations sorry, I use a sociological scientific term, but everybody should understand the tight relationship in political engineering here. And Trump's running for election. Vance is running for election, Putin's running for election, and you can see the engineering. It sticks out. Well, I won't use some. It's
John,
obvious. Let's just.
You are fantastic. Great breakdown.
No. It's nothing like that, Jamarl. Look, we've got to look at the way this deception works. We've got to understand these guys are Russian guys, American guys are predictable, very predictable. And we've got to figure if they're predictable, okay, we're all sitting at home wishing and hoping, but this is so predictable, we can basically come to a conclusion. There's not much hope here, folks. Does that mean you got to turn off your device, stop listening? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think we turn off our device and stop listening, but it does behoove us to have. I think people who cover this stuff get accustomed to it, but I don't think the larger public does. Meaning, I don't know if the larger public knows what you know. Hence, the breakdown is necessary. No, I don't think we turn off. I think I don't know. And from my point of view, it's a stay tuned type of thing.
Well, there's another point. I could be wrong. I could have just put all this stuff together, and maybe you've got some listeners who want to ask us questions, or maybe the stream of commenters say the old guy's an old fart and he's wrong. Okay, fine. I might be wrong. So let's look at the evidence. Read a bit. Tell me how you, Jamarl, or I'm wrong in reading the way this is going.
It's your model. It's just your model of the world. It's how you frame it. And you're just the man. So, of course, you could be wrong. But the logic works in regards to the way they're behaving and the way they're acting, which is the thing that is the determining factor in whether a model is helpful or not. And I define your model as beneficial and helpful. So, but John, Dances with Bears, I will put the article below. In fact, I had pulled the article up, but I will put that article below for the audience in the video after I cut it. You have a great rest of your day, man. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Jamarl. See you next time.
Absolutely, man. Be safe. All right. Shout out to John.